Welcome to another episode of Oz Comic Show. Today we are talking to Adam Gillespie about his book Koi, and yep, there's a copy of it. But before we do, I would just wanted to announce that this week is the return of Let's Make a Comic Book. That is on tomorrow night, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So tune in for that. We will be designing the character this time. So there'll be no blank coming straight in. There'll be just the character being designed. It's all from scratch. So we've got 3 artists doing that together. And so that will be an interesting night tomorrow night. And of course, we have the recent reads or comics recent reads on Friday night as well. So that'll be a lot of fun talking about what people have recently read and what they recommend and so forth. So that's this week. I'm not sure what's happening next week, so I won't go into that. And in that case, this is where I press the button with the loud music and we start the show. See you soon on the other side.
Welcoming in the CAA royalty, Adam Gillespie. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I have definitely been wanting to have you on the show for a very, very long time, and I'm very excited to talk all things Koi.
Awesome.
Let's jump straight in. Give us a little bit of an introduction about you, and maybe even a little bit of an elevator pitch of Koi.
Well, I started late in the comic making game. I started in 2016. It's in my late 30s. Spent a lot of time. I drew a lot of comics as a kid, but I spent a lot of time not drawing because I wasn't good enough, So I came to it late. And really enjoying getting my my feet wet with all this comic making stuff. Elevator pitch for Koi. Probably the best is the blurb on the back, but with a little bit added. It's Daniel Gray is the last human left alive. At the edge of space, at the end of time, Daniel is about to make a discovery that will change his very existence. A giant space fish.
Well said, well said. For those who don't know anything about you or your comics, how would you describe your writing style and your art style in just a few words?
I kind of fall, I don't know, I fall sort of art-wise, I fall halfway in between like messy and scratchy and like that really nice, clean, bold, cartoony style. I'm kind of neither. I'm a mishmash of both. I really like that really loose Jeff Lemire style art, and I also really like, proper traditional cartooning with those nice curves and clean lines. And I think I naturally just mesh those two together. So I'm not at all scratchy, but I'm not at all bold and curvy. I'm a bit of a mishmash. Writing wise, it's harder to pin down because I don't think any one of my works is the same. I've done absurdist comedy, I've done science fiction, I've done non-fiction.
You've done these as well?
Yeah, like documentary food comics. I think like writing style, whatever enters my brain as an idea and doesn't want to leave is just what ends up on the page. So
nice.
Yeah,
I think that's definitely a good balance to have as well. Yeah, absolutely. I did also dig out from the archives. You did mention that you started back in 2016. If there are any South Australian peeps watching, I actually found this, which was actually made by Adam as well. We actually met at Comics with Friends and Strangers, which was actually created by Gina and Owen, who are royalty here in South Australia, and they made a fantastic community for everyone who loves comics to come by. Was it monthly? I can't remember if it was monthly, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was like the last Monday of every month, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and we'd all gather at the box factory, and we'd all just draw comics, and they'd have like an activity, and we'd have snacks, and just everyone would come by, and it was just a really good networking and just awesome fun event, and something that I really look forward to, because when I was starting out, it was just
really great.
Yeah, it was a lifeline. So the fact that you made this as like a farewell present, it was really touching, and I think Gina and Owen would have loved these. But yeah, and then obviously also your food documentary comics that I also had to pick up as well. You've just got such a plethora of different comics. You've got such a variety, and I think that speaks volumes about your work. So yeah, obviously you did dive in 2016, but you also mentioned that you've been drawing for much longer than that. How long does that go?
Since I was old enough to pick up a pen.
What did you enjoy drawing?
My mum used to draw the comic characters off of covers of like Disney comics. She would read the comic, and then she would draw a grid on the comic with a pencil, and then draw a grid on a piece of paper, and she would copy Donald Duck onto this grid, and then she would spend hours just coloring it in with colored pencils, and it was always like great to see. And I just wanted to do the same thing. So when I was old enough to pick up a pen and draw myself, I would just do that. I would copy off of covers. Mum used to bring home Viz magazine. I don't know if either of you remember Viz, but I just used to I would open it and I would find like a cowboy character, and I would just copy these characters onto the page. So I was constantly just drawing whatever was in front of me. Usually cartoony stuff. It was easier to do when you're younger. But then I graduated and I would copy out of The Phantom, or I would copy out of whatever comic just found its way across my and none of them good, of course, because I was like 3 or 4, but that's where I started. Just as soon as I was old enough to draw, I was drawing, and it's all because of my mum, I think, having comics in the house and having that hobby of making her own coloring in pages, basically.
Yeah, nice. Jumping back to
sorry. I was just going to throw in some of the g'days because we've got a few.
Spency. Hey, Dave. Hello.
Hey, everybody.
And Kylie.
Awesome. And obviously, if anybody does have questions, keep them rolling in. Any questions you can add to my long list is always greatly appreciated. But jumping back into Koi, obviously, I had the pleasure of reading this last year for the CAA, which was formerly known as the Ledgers Award. I would personally describe this book as a little bit of a mix of things. It's got like a bit of science fiction in there, fantasy, really deep elements, kind of like philosophy in it as well. But I want to hear your words of how you would describe this little comic creation of yours, Adam.
It all started from like a doodle that I did of a spaceman, like an astronaut and a giant fish floating in front of him. It was just a random doodle that I did with no intention of creating Koi at the time. Just drew this picture, and it just sort of stuck in my head, this little germ of an idea of these two completely disparate things, but thematically, the actual story comes from just being in a really dark place when I drew that in 2019. I was not in a very good headspace, really bad mental health, and I don't know. The story just poured out of me like therapy. You know, it was really therapeutic getting that story and those images on the page. And that initial cartoon was just like the somewhere for me to put all those thoughts and ideas, and that's basically where it came from. But yeah, I guess initially I was just like, this is going to be science fiction, but it has a lot of like you said, those fantasy elements, not like traditional high fantasy, but the dream aspects and the nature of the koi fish being a giant fish in outer space is very fantastical. So yeah, I do think, like, personally, I think that it is a mix of science fiction and fantasy. But yeah, the actual story, that well of dark thoughts just sort of like spewed out onto the page. And by the end of it, I was better, you know. Well, it was a very therapeutic 6 months of art making, very much so.
And it won you the bronze medal at the CAA.
Yeah.
That's
right here, right where everyone can see it when they come in my house, because damn it, I won an award.
Can you tell us what it was like winning that award? Yeah.
It was amazing. Like, quite frankly, like, I'm not going to mince words. It was amazing. It's so rare. I don't think I've won anything in my life, really. Which you know, you don't do things to win awards, but those 6 months of drawing that, and I was just happy to sort of have it out in people's hands and them reading it, and it didn't matter what they thought of it, whether they enjoyed it, whether they thought it was okay, whether it wasn't for them. I was just happy that it had found an audience. But when I found out that I had won the A ledger, I was like,
I remember that face on stage. I saw it.
I was like, what?
It was
like, of all the works that are out there, like that little catalogue that they did. This is a bit battered and beat up, but that little catalogue they did with all of the comics that were nominated, shortlisted.
Yes.
For Koi to be like to win one of the awards over pretty much any of those other books is astounding to me. There's a little bit of imposter syndrome at play with every artist, that I think if you win an award, you go, "What, me?" But
I think it was definitely well deserved. And again, it kind of just showed the variety that there is in Australia when it comes to comics. So, and it was nice to have SA represented. It was awesome to see. That was a fantastic weekend, and I do remember sitting across from you.
It was a great weekend.
Yeah, and I remember getting your photo taken, and you were sitting across the table from me, and I was just like, yes, well deserved, well deserved.
An amazing weekend. I think that weekend was Paper Cuts Comic Festival too. So there was the award, and then there was the festival over the weekend, and it was just this amazing kind of long weekend of comics awesomeness.
Yeah, and we had a few people actually come over interstate. That was actually the first night I met Spedsy. Shout out to Spedsy. He was actually sitting next to me. Yeah, he was sitting next to me during the ceremony, which was fantastic. Quick Nick, who's usually on the Friday Drink and Draws, he was sitting on the other side of me. So yeah, it was just a really nice weekend of networking.
Shortlisted as well for Sluggish, which was a great book.
Absolutely. And something that also kind of touches on similar kind of themes as well. So yeah, shout out to Spedsy. I guess going on from the CAA award, CAA, can't really say awards because it's redundant. But, I guess that must have been like such a pinnacle point for you. But I think as artists, we're always like kind of improving ourselves. What kind of skills are you still improving on?
I have always worked traditionally. Even when I started back up in 2016, I was just like, give me a pen, give me some paper. And I know a lot of artists were already transitioned to the digital way before then. So I actually bought a laptop with a touch screen and a pen so that I could doodle and play and just improve myself in the digital arena. I find it so very daunting because it's so unlike traditional drawing. It does not feel the same. It does not react the same. It is a very steep learning curve. So that's where I'm at. I don't think you'll see anything digitally from me for a long time, but I am slowly trying to build that skill set. Yeah, for sure.
What would you say are your strengths then? Would it be the traditional drawing, or is there something else involved?
I don't know that traditionally drawing is a strength. There's certainly a lot of people that do it better than me. But I think, in all honesty, and I think something that a lot of people overlook when they're creating comics or any kind of art, really, whether it be writing or just painting, comic making, is that you're the only person that can do you.
Yes.
So I think my strength really lies in that I'm me. I'm not going to be able to pull out a Dylan Naylor comic. But I can make Adam Gillespie comics, whatever they look at the time, whatever they look like at the time, because it's such a personal thing. Like you're creating this story and you're putting it on the page and it's told from your unique point of view and your unique voice. And then you're drawing on top of it, like if you're drawing itself. So there's like those two separate aspects that are very unique to you. And if you're collaborating with somebody, then it's two unique views mingling together. And I think that's the strength of any comic creator, is that they're making their work.
Absolutely. Well said. I like that answer. That's a good answer. You, obviously, when creating comics, and you've done such a variety of different comics, what would you say is your favorite thing to draw, and what is the most challenging thing to draw?
To this day, my favorite thing to draw is Superman. I'm a little kid, but when I'm not drawing something for a comic and I'm just doodling away, it always comes back to Superman, whether it be the S Shield or something. I always doodle it. I always love doodling it, and sometimes I try and pull out sometimes I try and pull out my best John Byrne and draw a Superman. Sometimes I'll just draw my Superman. But I just have so much fun doing it. I think if you look through all the pieces of paper in my house, at least 30 to 40% of that would be Superman drawings.
That's so cool.
Challenging things, man. Cars, vehicles in general, but cars. How do people draw cars? I got to use reference, and then I still get it wrong. I can't. Like when you draw, like a lot of people have difficulty with horses. I love horses. I don't like drawing them particularly, but if I draw a horse, I kind of feel like you can use reference. You get it, if you're a cartoony kind of drawer, you can, sort of go, this is the shape of a horse and big googly eyes. And people go, yeah, that's a horse. But cars, man, like even if you're using reference, if you get it just like wrong, like a couple of mil here where the headlight's not quite right, they just look really odd on the page. Like if you I almost got to trace a damn car to get it right. That's how hard I find drawing vehicles.
It's all like the perspective and whatnot. Like with houses and things like that, you're always going to get like, especially with like old houses and stuff like that, you can kind of get away with a little bit of a ski whiff like perspective. But cars, they're just like
Yeah,
You
it's
can't go.
really strange unless you're drawing something so ridiculously cartoony.
Yeah, exactly.
Then yeah, like if it's even just a little bit realistic and it's not quite right, it looks weird. And
Yeah.
I struggle. I really struggle. Yeah. I
As
try
soon
my
as
best to avoid drawing them.
as soon as you said horses, I'm sure that Dave Dyer in the comments probably perked up a little bit. Him and Dinky, his horse Dinky. Shout out to Dinky. I guess having said that you draw a lot of Superman, would you say that that is perhaps your all-time favorite comic? Dare I say?
Yeah, he was growing up. He was probably like Superman the movie was and is to this day one of my favorite films. Like I never get tired of watching it. It's so nostalgic and just such a hopeful film. And I think I saw that before I picked up a comic. But I have just always loved Superman, stemming from that movie. Um, I was coming of age, like I was a teenager when the Death of Superman hit the shelves, and it is, yeah, it's a very much like uh, I guess the kids would call it a core memory these
Yeah.
days, like the Death of Superman for me. Um, so yeah, Superman as a character, I always have time for Superman. All-time favorite comics. I'd be remiss to not mention Bug and Stump, Australian comic from the 90s, that tragically ended on a cliffhanger. Is just one of my all-time favorite comic books. I love it. Every time I reread it, I love it all over again. Something a bit more recent. I loved it as soon as I read it, and I recommend it to anybody. The Underwater Welder by Jeff Lemire is a phenomenal read. It
I
is
think you referenced
great.
that at the beginning of the interview, did you not? Jeff Lemire?
Jeff Lemire is one of my favorite artists. I love pretty much everything that he does. Like his style is just fantastic, and he's put out a few books over the years that are just gobsmackingly good. And probably my favorite of all of them is The Underwater World. It was published, I want to say 2011 or 2012 by Top Shelf. Great book if you can find a copy. Absolutely.
I'll have to put it on my TBR, that's for sure. How about a horse driving a car? How about you, Aaron? You draw that for us. We'd love to see that. Hi, Peter. I guess kind of moving on a little bit further along, I really want to dive deep into the nitty gritty about Koi. You said it took you around about 6 months to create this little masterpiece that won you the bronze medal. Can you walk us through the process it took to get there?
Yeah, I say 6 months, but it was like 6 months of drawing more than anything else. So there was time taken to write it prior to that. Roughly May 2019 to the end of 2019, just drawing the pages. I work full time, so my comic making is in my spare time, which I don't have a lot of because I also have kids. So basically what I did was I wrote the story in prose. Like I didn't break it down by page or by panel. I just wrote the story. And then I let the pace dictate itself to me when I drew it. I had no idea. I'd only ever done mini comics prior to that, 20 pages, 24 pages. I knew that I couldn't get the story that I wanted to tell into that space, but I didn't really know how to go about planning. I know people thumbnail and stuff, and I do that with my comics as well. But I just didn't know how to get all these feelings and this story out without it being more organic. So I just let the pace dictate itself to me as I drew it. So I had the printed page of story just stuck to my drawing table, and then I drew from that, and the panels came out on the page as the pace dictated itself to me. So
Yeah.
if I felt like it needed to go faster, it got faster. If I felt like it needed to slow down for a few pages, it would slow down. And that's how I did it. So I did thumbnail, but I was thumbnailing on the go. So I was like reading from the prose, doing a quick rough sketch of how I thought the page should go, then drawing the final page.
Yeah, I think that way that you did it, it came across super authentic, and I think that's what really broke apart from the rest, in my opinion. You could tell how authentic it was, and that's what I really enjoyed about it. The colors in it as well. I've been waiting to ask this question. The colors in it is just so simplistic, but so well done, so effective. Can you tell us a little bit more about the choices behind those?
I can. I pretty much only work in black and white. I don't really. None of my other work is in color, aside from the covers. I have just always worked in black and white. I really like black and white art. I like colored art, but I love black and white art. I just feel like it just speaks to me. I love it. But I knew I wanted to do something a bit different here with the fish. And orange was a no-brainer to me because of, the koi fish have like the orange patches on them and everything. And I just knew single color splash in black and white art looks great. Frank Miller's Sin City does it, I think, really well. Other people have done it really well. So I wanted to have that kind of feel where the fish and the light emanating off of the fish, so like the reflections on windows and on Daniel's skin, were to be orange with the stark black and white. So I'm like I said before, I do not do digital work at all. So I colored the fish with the bucket tool in MS Paint.
No way.
All of the artists are out there probably dying of heart attacks right now. I apologize. I understand that it's quite terrible. But that's how I do it. I know there's other programs out there that I could have used. I actually had GIMP on my computer at the time I was coloring it, but buggered if I could make heads or tails of GIMP.
I can't either. I totally understand.
It's not an easy program to make heads or tails of, so I was just like, bugger it. MS Paint.
That is by far my favorite fun fact that I've ever heard on the show, that somebody's colored their comic with MS Paint. I love that. That is amazing. Makes me love this book even more, honestly. I guess, so having spoken about your process and the steps you took to get to where it is now, what were your favorite stages and what was the most challenging stage for you in that process?
Favorite? Inking. That's probably my favorite part of comic making, simply because it's so zen. I love the creation side of it. If I just liked inking, I would ink other people's stuff, but it's kind of stressful when you're like in the creation stage, that I feel like whilst I enjoy that, it takes that edge of enjoyment off of it. And when you're inking, it's just pure enjoyment. It's like, it's the best of comic making. The hard stuff is on the page already, and you can just go in there and you can, layer in those blacks and splatter the black with white out and just sort of go to town, pure drawing fun, because there's no little, oh, what should go here? What angle should this be? That's already there. You're just beautifying it. And I think that's definitely my favorite, and always has been my favorite. It's such a joy to go in there with the pens and ink that. Challenging, in all honesty, it was the ending. I knew how I wanted it to end, but you worry so much about sticking the landing that it becomes such a stressful part of the process. That's always my least favorite, is finishing it off, and then you have doubts, and then you're like, should I change this? Should I change that? Should I leave it? But that's always my least favorite. That's always the most challenging part for me, is getting that ending and trying to stick the landing. And you're not always going to stick the landing. People have told me I didn't quite stick the landing with this particular book. Other people have told me they loved it. That's a subjective thing. But from a creator point of view, it's just, I think you worry about that bit. And that's always a challenge, trying to overcome that worry to just get it done. So another challenge is, being that I work full time and that I've got kids and I've got such a finite amount of time to do the work. Sometimes you just don't want to. Sometimes you go, I don't want to. I want to watch The Expanse on telly, or Doctor Who. I don't want to draw. And then that takes that slot of time out of the creation process. So having the discipline to make yourself sit down and do the work is also a challenge, which I'm sure a lot of artists out there. It's hard to make a living as a comic creator in Australia, more so than other countries, I think. There are people that do it, and that's excellent. I know a lot of people that have a day job, and that's a struggle. So finding the time, but not just finding the time and then finding the discipline to just do it is I think that's important.
Yeah, and I think it's a huge.
I think in one of my earlier books,
a super huge credit to you. It's very admirable of you that you've done everything that you do. But yeah, bouncing back onto the comment about the way you ended Koi, I personally thought that it was really well-rounded. And I don't want to spoil anything, but there's just something about the shape of the ending, might I add, that just really correlates well with the cover. There's an element on the cover. I'm not going to say anything else, but there's just the way that you rounded it off. It was really nicely done. Anyway, continue.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry. I was just going to say, one of my earlier comics, I think the dedication was to my family for basically letting me ignore them whilst I create the comic. And I think that's that's the thing. When you've got full-time work, family, when you're at home, you should be with your family. But when you want to make comics, you've got to make comics. So yeah, having a family that supports you, taking that time away from them for your art, it's great.
Oh,
very cool.
That's so heartwarming. I guess moving right along, I know that Amplified Press is on the back of your cover here. Can you talk us a little bit about the process of what it was like getting published? I also have just flown back from Melbourne, and I was lucky enough to spot one of your titles in a Melbourne comic shop, which was really cool to see. But yeah, let's hear more about that.
All Star Comics, yeah. I've done 3 comics with Amplified Press now. The first was a collection of my webcomic, Help I'm a Projectionist, which Owen approached me to publish the first, I think it was the first 24 strips of that webcomic as a physical little mini comic. Another one called The Unauthorized Biography of Bergerk Bergertson, which is on the shelf in All Star Comics, and then Koi. Being published by Amplified Press was it needed to be done. Like I was never going to pull the trigger on it myself. Like I would create a comic and then put it in my drawer, all over Red Rover. That was it. So having someone else come in and just say, "I want to publish your work," validates you, but also it sort of gives you, like, I think that's what Amplified Press do. They amplify voices that wouldn't normally be heard otherwise. And I think like people like me who are like too gun shy to try and self-publish, or people that just flat out can't afford to self-publish because it can be expensive getting stuff printed. That's a godsend. Koi in particular, I didn't really create it with Amplified Press in mind. I didn't really have anything in mind for it, really. I finished it, COVID hit, it sat in a drawer for like 2 years. It had been read. I brought the original art in a folder to Comics with Friends and Strangers, which we mentioned earlier. And a few people there were able to read through it, and a lot of people were very, very kind, telling me that it was like a level up in my storytelling, which was very validating as well. But I pulled it out of the drawer sort of early 2022-ish, and was like, got to do something with this. And I thought with the black and white art and the orange, the mix, that it would look great being Rezo printed. So I reached out to a few Rezo publishers in Melbourne just to find out how you would go about it, how much it would cost to get it printed. And it was just really cost prohibitive for the amount of pages that it is for my pocket. So that was scrapped. And then I was like, well, I guess I could get it. So I looked into a lot of other options for self-publishing. And Owen from Amplified Press emailed me. He goes, "Hey, I know you've got this bee in your bonnet to try and get this out yourself. But what if Amplified Press published it?" So we spoke about that, and he did the Kickstarter, which was like fully funded in like 12 hours or something. It was crazy.
Amazing.
That's awesome.
And like, I don't think anything that I could have done with it personally, self-publishing, would look as good as the finished product. So it went to the right person to publish it. And very thankful for Owen for putting it out. And it's their first graphic novella that they published. I think just prior to this, they published a collection by George Rex, which was a similar size, but this was the first sort of volume of that size that was one story that they published. So I'm happy that I could be their first graphic novel.
Yeah, absolutely. And what a graphic novel it is to start the ball rolling. So we've talked a little bit of your process. I want to kind of cast our eyes to the future. Are there any projects on the horizon at all?
There is, yes. I am currently working on a comic called Sobek Lives, which is a few things. Having done some mini comics and having done Koi, I decided that I wanted to do something serialized. I don't know that I'm going to be any good at it. I've been working on this for 12 months. I don't think issue 2 is ever going to come out, but I needed to try my hand at it. Nice. I needed to try my hand at it. Being a comic fan, 9 out of 10 comic fans are going to have grown up reading the big 2 from the States, the DC Comics, Marvel Comics. They're all serialized. I think deep down in my like ape comic reading brain, serialized equals comics. I have moved on to graphic. I read mostly graphic novels and collections now, but serialized comics is what I think of as real comics. So I thought, even if it's just once in my life, I want to try my hand at serialized comics. So I'm working on this book called Sobek Lives. I'm hoping to have the first issue ready for the end of this year. But yeah, it's about the Egyptian god of crocodiles, Sobek, leaving heaven and coming to Earth to work in a secondhand bookstore, and all of the things that happen because of that.
I'm very intrigued. I'm looking forward to this. I'll make sure to mark it on my. That sounds amazing. It's good to know that you're working on another project as well, because now that I've got my little collection of Adam on my bookshelf, I'm yet to keep adding to it. So I'll keep my eyes peeled. I guess out of all the projects, was there that you've published so far or printed so far, has there been a favorite, or is that like asking which child's the favorite?
I think it's the opposite of asking which child is the favorite, because you're not going to hurt a book's feelings. So, if you're watching, kids, I love you both equally. Probably my favorite. I do have a lot of affection for. I have a lot of affection for Koi. I really do. It's very nearly my favorite, but I just have a soft spot for the unauthorized biography of Bergerke Bergertsen, which was my first proper comic book. It's just a 24-page mini comic. That's the story. It's not serialized or anything. It's just, go to woe. That's it. 24 pages. I'd only ever really worked on short stuff prior to that. 1 page, 3 pages, 8 pages. So this was my first comic that I did. It was published by Owen at Amplified Press. And I just really happy with the way it turned out. The absurdist humor, I think, lands. It makes me chuckle when I read it, and I wrote the damn thing. I don't know if that's egotistical, but yeah, I just have a soft spot for that particular comic. Yeah,
amazing. Oh, that's very heartwarming. But yeah, you've got such a huge variety of comics, so I had to ask that question because I'm just wondering. This one's more of a loaded question, but I do like asking this one to everyone that comes up on the show, because as artists, I think everybody struggles with this from time to time. How do you overcome creative block?
I'll work on something else.
So
yeah. I just, if I find myself sitting there just going, I don't know where to go with this, or whether it's in the writing stage and you're like, I'm stuck, or you're drawing and you're just like, I can't make this page work. I've got so many, sometimes I think it's a bit of a detriment. I've got too many irons in the fire. Maybe it's distracting, but I tend to only work on one thing at a time, but I've got other things boiling. If I just get stuck on something, I just put it aside and I work on something else. I did that with Sobek Lives. I got to a certain sort of part of the story, and I was just like, these pages aren't working for me at the moment. So I just jumped off of it, and I did a brief history of pineapple on pizza, and I was able to come back to, that's it there. Yeah.
Yes.
I was able to come back to Sobek with, taking a break from it, come back with fresh eyes, and he's sort of, jumped back into it. But I just jump on something else,
It's
even if
so
it's just
nice.
a doodle.
Yeah, and it's so nice to know that I'm not the only one who does that. I too feel really guilty if I've got multiple different projects going on, but I would agree with you in saying that having multiple projects helps keep it interesting, so to speak.
It does, yeah, but it can kind of distract. Just maybe if I just worked on one, it would get out on time, as opposed to 12 months later still drawing. So
I guess having talked about your whole journey and whatnot, this too is another favorite question for me, especially if you've got people who are just starting their comic journey. What do you wish someone had told you before you started said comic journey?
I'll tell you what I think I wish someone had told me, and I'll tell you what I wish someone hadn't told me because it was damaging.
Oh.
I'll start with that one so that we end on a happy note.
Yeah.
When I was in my late teens, I expressed an interest in being a comic book artist, but of course back then it was I want to draw Batman or Superman. I want to draw comics. I was basically told, you're not that good. You're not gonna make it as an artist. That's not a career option for you. You should focus on other things, do other things. And I didn't really draw anything probably 16 years, 2000 to 2016. So I wish that hadn't been said. I wish I hadn't taken it to heart, maybe, is a better way of saying it. Because I think it came from a loving place when it was said to me. But I wish I hadn't taken it to heart. Because I feel like, I feel like an old man now, starting up again. And other people my age, so much more accomplished, and none of that matters. I'm doing what I love doing, But yeah, I wish that hadn't been said to me when I was 19 years old. What I wish someone did say to me is just do the comic. It's, even if no one reads it, just draw it. Draw it for you. Don't draw it for anyone else. If other people read it, or if you find an audience, that's just gravy. That's icing on the cake. Do the comic making just for you. Just do it. Don't go in with like, I'm going to make a graphic novel, or don't go in with I'm going to create a famous character that I'm going to get a movie deal. Don't go in thinking I'm going to make money off of this. Just do it because you love doing it. And I think if you just sit down and you just make your first comic, and for me it was Help, I'm a Projectionist. I went along to Comic with Friends and Strangers, hadn't drawn for years, was doing like the weekly, the monthly challenge and stuff like that. And then I was just like, this is cool. There are people out here just doing this for fun. And so I went home and I drew the first Help, I'm a Projectionist strip. And I put it on a Facebook page. I think my mum read it, But I was just like, I love doing this. And like everything else that came after that is just gravy. Just doing it. And I wish someone had told me it doesn't need to be a magnum opus. It doesn't need to be a money maker. It doesn't need to be your career. If you love comics and you want to make comics, just make comics.
Exactly. Well said. And I hope I'm more than sure that 19-year-old Adam is smiling and very, very proud of the you that's holding the bronze medal from the CAAA.
100%.
100%.
My daughter asked me the other day, she said, when you were a kid, what did you want to do? Like, what did you want to do when you grew up? And I said, I wanted to be a rock star. I wanted to be a musician. I wanted to be an astronaut. And I wanted to be a comic artist. And she said, Dad, you did it. I was like, you're right, I did do it. I did it.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
Yeah. I get to do what I wanted to do when I grew up, now that I'm grown up. So yeah.
Absolutely. I think
happy.
that's,
and 19-year-old me is happy too. So,
yeah.
Because I still feel I still feel, don't let the grays fool you, I still feel 19.
No, that's a super huge credit to you, and I think that was really well said. I think that's quite a common answer to that question on this show, and I just like to reiterate it all the time. A lot of artists just say, just do it for you. And I think, yeah, I think
I think like it's not self-evident when you're younger, and I think it becomes self-evident as you get older, and you wish someone had just told you that. So yeah,
absolutely, and it's good that you're telling it now, because maybe someone in the watching tonight might just need that too. So yeah, good stuff to hear.
Yep.
I guess moving along, what would you say is your ultimate comic goal, if you have one?
Just keep making them.
Yeah,
I recently changed professions. I worked for a great many years as a projectionist in cinema, which was a fantastic job, and it was the basis for like 70 or 80 odd strips of Help I'm a Projectionist. Film went the way of the dodo like a decade ago. Everything went digital, and my job basically just got less and less projection based and more office based. And so I realized working shift work and working late and working Christmas and working public holidays and working weekends was not what I wanted to do anymore, because the projection job had changed so much, and I wanted to do something where I could spend time with my family. So I changed professions. I got a 9 to 5 job, Monday to Friday. I've got weekends free. I've got nights free. I see my family a whole heap more. My productivity comic making has gone through the floor. I used to draw. My wife would be at work. My kids would be at school. I would be at home making comics. They would get home from school and work. I would go to work. So now when I'm at home, they're at home, and I'm having so much fun watching movies with my son. He's getting into horror films, reading books with Emily at bedtime, my daughter, spending time with my wife, as opposed to just being ships that pass in the night kind of thing.
Yeah.
I am loving it so much, but just that change in job means that I am nowhere near as productive as I used to be, and nowhere near as prolific as I used to be. So my ultimate goal is to just not let that fade away. Recognize I love this, even if it's just, selling 2 copies at a fair. I want to keep making them until I'm old and grey.
Right.
That's my goal.
But it definitely sounds like you're enjoying all the important stuff at the moment, which I think is even better to hear. I guess we're kind of getting towards the tail end of the show. These next 3 questions are, if not probably the most important in my eyes. And that's what do you think the Aussie indie comic scene needs more of?
I would have said a few years ago, I would have said publishers. Trying to self-publish and get your work seen is a difficult thing at the best of times. But I would have said publishers, except now you've got Cyclone have come back, Reverie have come back, Comics have stepped up into that void. There are like the micro presses like Amplified Press. There's some Rezo micro presses in Melbourne. A lot of the book publishers are venturing into graphic novels like Alan and Unwin and Brow Books, and that's what I think what was needed, and it is slowly building and coming in, and it's definitely a long time coming, I think, and can only help Australian cartoonists and writers and artists get their work seen. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And what do you think the comic scene does well at?
Community.
Absolutely.
No other community that I've been a part of has been as supportive as the local Australian comic making community. locally in Adelaide, I found a very, very, very supportive community. Everyone is so supportive of everyone else's work. And that just, like, when I discovered communities online, it's Australia wide. There's Discord servers for comic creators to chat and support each other and show their work. And there's these shows on YouTube from the comics, and just like the community is such a huge part of it that it's you just want to stay and do more. Like, I've got to stay in the comic community. I'll make more comics. I'll be part of the community that is supportive of my work. And it's just this self-fulfilling thing that just, I think it drives the Australian, well, because we don't have the market that America has. And I don't think we'll ever have the market that America has. Unfortunately, I don't think the Australian population, maybe, but the community drives the creatives, I think, and it's fantastic to see.
Absolutely. And a massive shout out goes to this guy next door, but also to Gina and Owen from Amplified Press as well. I too can agree with that. Is that comics of friends and strangers?
Co-creators of comics of friends and strangers. Co-creators of paper cuts.
Absolutely, and they really threw. They threw a lifeline.
Integral members of the Adelaide comic making community, Australian comic making community, for sure.
Absolutely. But yeah, obviously seeing like your work from, I mean, when I came along, it was maybe 2018, so you were a few years into your like comic creating journey. It's been so amazing to see your journey come to where it is now, having a bronze medal on your shelf.
Still can't believe it myself.
Right? And it's an amazing feeling. But I guess for everyone watching tonight, where can we see / buy some of your stuff?
My work that has been published by Amplified Press is available on their online store at amplifiedpress.com.au. I think they still have Begurk Bergetson and Koi available. Help I'm a Projectionist sold its print run, which is fantastic. So that's no longer available. But yeah, through their store, there's a few shops around that stock my work. Greenlight Comics in Adelaide, always a very big supporter of my stuff. You mentioned All Star Comics in Melbourne before. They stock a lot of really great Australian comics in their local section as well. D's Comics in Canberra are sadly closing, but they've always been a massive supporter of Australian comics. I think maybe I've got some stuff in there. I'm not 100% sure, but if you're in Canberra, go and have a look anyway and buy lots of other stuff. And Owen, the publisher of Amplified Press, is going to be in Sydney this weekend at Other Worlds Zine Fair in Marrickville.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yes.
So he's going to have a lot of Adelaide comics available there, including my work. Yeah.
I'm
also at Atom_Gillespie on Instagram if you just want to see my doodles. Yeah.
Amazing. Adam, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Again,
the pleasure is mine.
If you haven't already read Koi, go pick up yourself a copy. It won the bronze award at the CAA last year. So definitely make sure you go and check out some of his other stuff. He's got a plethora, a whole library of stuff. But other than that, that wraps up the show. Is there anything else we've missed, Shane?
I will just go through the comments that were missed because I didn't want to interrupt the
What have we got?
conversation so much. But someone really liked that you use Paint, MS Paint. That comment came in when we'd changed the conversation totally. There's such a lag between this and what we do.
I think Omnibo also.
Yeah. He thinks your art is great, and then he compared it.
Thank you very much, Bo.
Ta-da!
Amazing. Yeah, I probably can't hide it. Yeah. He's one of my faves for sure.
And I think that's everything. I've caught up.
Awesome. Amazing. And obviously, just to wrap up, the shows that are coming up for those who maybe joined us late.
Yeah. We've got Let's Make a Comic Book coming back tomorrow night. And we will be designing the new character for the new book. 3 artists will be designing that. I don't know how that works. I'm not in the right circles. I don't know. I'm not important enough. And then we have recent reads, or comics recent reads, sorry, on Friday night as well, where we just chat about comics we've read. And Saturday, I keep forgetting Saturday. I'm coming back to do my little thing, Amateur Hour, where I try to draw. And this week it is Jean Grey. That's right. I totally forgot. Thank God for Kerry.
Nice.
Amazing. Well, we've got lots to look forward to, that's for sure. Cool. Awesome. Other than that, I think that pretty much wraps up our show. Thanks to everyone for joining us tonight. And thank you again to Adam for being our guest tonight. It was amazing talking to you.
Thanks for having me.
And before we go, remember to like and subscribe and share the video. That would be awesome. Thanks again, Adam. Thank you, Sheydin. Thank you, everyone who watched. Thank you for everyone who watches in the future. And have a great night, everyone.
Good night.
Check out comex.cx for all things comics and find out what comics is all about. We hope you enjoyed the show.